but I was drawn to the sports and didn't know it maybe till later, but I was really drawn to the team part of it and people, not just guys, but people, caring about each other and giving my gifts away. We talk about give your gifts away for free. Don't, I'm gonna lift really hard if I can be all conference, or I'm gonna lift really hard, or I'm gonna do the extra work for me. But you kind of have to, if you don't care who gets the credit, there's a lot more joy, and I promise you'll be more effective.
Hey everyone, and welcome to Rooted, where we are rooted in truth, growing in freedom, and prospering in life.
We're your hosts, Josie and Symone, and we are so excited to be joined with a special guest today, Coach Steve Johnson. He led Bethel's football team for 35 years, leading the program to national prominence, and has 252 career wins. So that's impressive. Thank you so much, Coach Johnson, for joining us today.
Thanks. It's my pleasure. It's fun to be on. Cracks me up when you say that, because my own kids, if I'm getting to be too much of a big shot, they remind me that I lost a whole bunch of games too.
That's so good.
Well, we always like to start the podcast with kind of going back to people's roots. How did they get to where they are now? So do you kind of want to talk about your growing up and just how that made you into the person you are today?
Yeah, I think it's a lot my story. I grew up in Chicago area, and kind of the bigger the place, the more confined you are. But my dad was a Baptist pastor, was Baptist General Conference back then, and he was really good one back then. Everybody in Chicago anyway was either Catholic or a legalistic Baptist, and there were only a few legalistic Baptists. But my dad wasn't one of those. He preached out of the Word, and it was kind of a grace-filled message, from the get-go. And again, I'm just a little kid. I don't understand that better later, as I understood. And one of my things, like even when I was coaching with our players, I want to play free, run free, live free, and kind of sometimes we get in the bondage of sin. Sometimes we get in the bondage of being so careful that we don't realize that the Lord loves us, and He really just wants us to be in the battle, not kind of worrying about But I did grow up that way a little bit. I grew up where I thought that God was a father, and not a father, not in a good way, but in like He was always mad or disappointed maybe in me. And but I had a dad who was like, and I tell a story to our guys all the time, but he was deaf. So he not totally deaf, but mostly, but consequently talked really loud. And so you guys might have to turn down the thing here today once in a while. But we'd go to McDonald's, and this is in the 60s before drive-through and everything. But he'd say, "Hey, how about a Big Mac?" And he's got all this enthusiasm, and it's kind of funny, but not to me. I was embarrassed, and now I'm embarrassed that I was embarrassed, because, man, I'd love to hang out with somebody like that all the time, And so at his funeral, I said, "Happy is a man who's grateful." And sorry, but that's one of the things that is monumental to our football program, to my family, to I think that the number one thing is that we can be grateful, and that's gonna turn into joy. Grateful in trials is like in James, it talks about as you fight through those things, it's gonna grow you. So you're grateful even for bad stuff, but especially for good stuff. Because if you're hanging out with, I grew up hanging out with my dad, who thought everything was amazing. That's kind of a neat gift to give a little kid, and sometimes I worry about what I might be complaining about, and I'm better at worrying about that if I'm by my grandkids. But it's kind of got this way that I want to be, and I want my family to be, my football guys, you guys, to be grateful. Because if you're really grateful, it's hard to be grateful and sad, and grateful and down, grateful and grumping. So I just think it's really an immediate tenant, and in First Thessalonians, it says, rejoice always. And, we kind of think, oh, rejoice always. And then it seems like a hymn, well, rejoice always means have a happy heart. Let's go. You know what I mean? If you're awake, let's go. And so that's the first thing. The second one is pray without ceasing. As a little kid, I'll kind of go back and forth with this. As a little kid, I grew up kind of, I got to pray without ceasing, have my eyes closed. Well, I wanted to play baseball, And so you want to go out and play all your stuff. Well, I'm supposed to pray without ceasing, and the funny pictures that you get when you're a little kid, and I look back and I think, oh man, that was not that good. That's not the greatest theology ever. But I remember, but now I think about pray without ceasing, man. I'm always connected, so rejoice always, be happy. If you're in the elevator, hey, how you doing? Or I'd rather be happy and have them think I'm a weirdo than grumpy and have them think I'm a creep, right? So same thing with rejoice always, and then pray without ceasing. I feel like being connected to the King is where it's not like you're oh hallelujah. It's more like always connected. Lord, here's where we are. Let's go. And I think that's ever mindful, but it's kind of a heart thing too. It's kind of where that head and heart and kind of get all connected in there. And then the third thing it says in that verse is be thankful for all things. First of all, rejoice, and I think that's attitude. The second one is pray without ceasing, and that's kind of committed, but it's natural. I don't mean, sometimes I grew up really in a culture of, be good boy, be, do all these things and just be just like that. And you can never make it, you can never do right all the time. And and as I think about that, I think of the battle that you guys, that we're all in, but kids, especially today, we didn't have near the goofiness that our world has today. The fight is even worse. The only good thing is you got to choose sooner what kind of man or woman you want to be. And
right.
But as you go through that, pray without ceasing to me just means connected. So be happy, have a happy heart, happy attitude, stay connected, especially to the King. But it means relationships too. Forgive fast. Do that. When you can live in peace with others, and that's not that easy to do, but it's something that you want to do, that you want to work at. And then the third thing is be thankful for all things, and it's capital LL. I always joke that all in the Greek means all, but it's grateful for all things. And what that means is the tough stuff, the stuff that where, man, somebody wronged me, I lost this, or somebody, whatever. Be grateful for all things. Jesus didn't, follow me so that you can have a blast, and it'll be like we'll go on a Disney ride. Just said, follow me, and it's going to be a bear. It's going to be a tough deal, but at the end of that deal is you're going to grow, you're going to persevere, you're going to do all those things. So be thankful for all things. And that kind of goes back to rejoicing for the good stuff, and an attitude thing. And then the next part is pray without, be connected with him. And then the third thing is be grateful for all things. And this is kind of a cool thing for me that wraps it up is, and then it goes on to say, for this is the will of the Lord for your life. And I remember I've always done Bible studies and, what's God's will? Well, he wants me to have romaine lettuce instead of iceberg, or, something. I don't know where that came from. You guys, you just got it. But
So good.
Like, I don't think he care. He might care about that stuff, but I doubt it. The will for our lives is to be rejoicing, stay connected. He doesn't mean, well, I'm gonna slow down here and be connected. Not that that's not something that you want to do sometimes, but it's not realistic in the United States of America to have a whole lot of time to think about all these things. So it's got to become your way. Your way has to be happy heart. Here we go. Your way has to be, and you don't have to act like a nut like I'm doing here, but inside, you know what I mean? But like, don't walk around like, you know what I mean? So there's quite a bit of room
I feel
in
like
between
too,
there.
like just your energy of your passion for it naturally inspires other people to want to act the same way. Like you were saying, how,
Exactly.
if you're in the elevator and you're just being a grouch, it's naturally going to just bring the mood down in that whole elevator. And so I think that's an incredible point. And I just love too, I remember in chapel one time you talked about wanting to follow God because you want to, but not because you're supposed to. And I just
Yeah.
think that's an excellent point, because when, like, all these things, rejoice always, pray continually, it's not out of a duty or an obligation to, but out of, hey, I want to because you are my heavenly Father. And you talk about how God can't love you anymore. Could you expand on that a little bit for our audience about how God can't love you
Yeah.
anymore?
Yeah. And right what you're saying, kind of to finish up where I started with my dad, who was like a nut. When I was in college, Brennan Manning spoke. I was at Bethel at a chapel, and I wasn't the best attender in the history of chapel, but my heart got changed where the Holy Spirit was working on me. But I grew up with God the Father was always ticked off at me or disappointed in me. And Brendan Manning's whole message is my Abba is very, very, very fond of me. He loves me so much. And Brendan Manning was a broken guy. He was an amazing preacher, but he was a messed up dude. And that was me. But the picture came to me that God is not looking down there. Oh, there you go again, or frustrated with me. I thought of my dad and, hey, Steve-O, yeah. You know what I mean? It's like every time I showed up, he went nuts, you know. So I try to do that with my kids. They don't like that very much because they're in their 30s. But my grandkids, you get what I'm saying? So I picture a daddy. He is omnipotent. He is all powerful. He is the God of the universe. He is the Father. I fear the Lord, big time. But he's also my daddy. And he's also just loves us like crazy. We have no idea. And that kind of, I kind of was always saved or whatever and always, but I just feel like you have to choose him every day. And my joy is full in him, not because he's nice to me, but because I just believe that he did love me enough to send his son. I have a son, and I'm not going to kind of give him away to you clowns, and especially to have him killed. You know what I mean? And spit on. But it had to be done so that he could have a relationship with us and we with him. And that's a lot of love, and we can't comprehend it. Sometimes we've gotten too smart for our own good because we've got to figure everything out. It's really hard for super duper 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 smart people to accept God because they think they're God, whatever. But there's a little bit of a deal where there's some stuff that I can't figure out, and I don't want to be lazy and say, well, oh, that's because he's God. But I also, if we could figure him out, he wouldn't be God. You know what I mean? And if we understood how much he loved us, it'd be scary. Instead, I'm going to just say it's exciting because I'm taking it. I told somebody the other day, if God didn't send his son and that didn't happen, I'd still want to be who I am. I'd still want to walk this way with that deal because there's a faith piece because I haven't, I've seen God work, but I haven't seen God that I know of. And so it's kind of going back to your thing, Josie, was where I don't think we can comprehend his love for us. And most of the time that we can't do that is when we're struggling with stuff. And I really have a hard time with, well, why did God let this happen? It goes back to what I said before. He said, follow me. Jesus said, follow me. And I'll make you fishers of men. We're going to talk to men. But we weren't promised this. We can have abundant life, but that's kind of an attitude thing. Like, we are in the midst of caring for our life, all the different things that are going on, and we cannot just sit there and, kind of veg out this way. Oh, I want my relationship with the Lord to be, here we go. You want to come with? I'm going. I asked my dad when I was a kid. I said, "Hey, Dad, where are you going?" He goes, "Crazy. You want to come?" And I said, "Yeah." And that's how I kind of feel about the Heavenly Father. Like, let's go. You know what I mean? And I kind of want to be that way. And I'm not always, and I get that. But I just think that if we knew how much God loved us, it would melt away some of our anger, my anger. It would melt away some. I'd be better at forgiving, people that slight you or disrespect or whatever it is. And we get in fights about stuff and they last too long. And I think if we could get that, and that's part of why you pray without ceasing. If you're staying connected, you're gonna do those things. If you're unconnected, you're gonna get more, less. You're gonna get more human and less divine, in your attitude and in your heart and in your walk and in your attitude. So
That's amazing. And I love what you were saying about choosing to follow Christ and what that looks like. And that reminds me, I heard a pastor speak the other day, and he was talking about the feeding of the 5,000 and how there were about 20,000 people there who saw this miracle happen, who took the bread, took the fish, and they ate, and 12 ended up following Christ, right?
Wow.
And all those others, like, they put him on the cross.
Yeah.
And that's what I want to strive to be like. I want to be that person who doesn't just see the miracles and get whatever God can give me, but it's like, no, I'm going to follow you. I'm going to pick up my cross and I'm going to be one of those 12 and I'm going to follow you.
Yeah.
And at the end of that story of the feeding of the 5,000, Jesus looks at Peter and he says, "Are you going to go as well?" Like all the people who had left the scene. Yeah. And Peter looks to him and he says, "Lord, to whom shall we go? You have the words of eternal life." And it's like Peter is saying, I've witnessed this. Why would I want something else? Where am I going to go? I've tried all of the things. I've tried to fulfill my life, and I found you, and I want nothing else. Wow. And so I just think that's just amazing about what that looks like to follow Christ. And once you experience him, you're like, why would I want anything else?
Yeah, that's awesome. And that is where you're, where we sit, but then we get distracted. But as he's over and over and over. He doesn't change. We do, mm-hmm. And he's over and over and over again proved himself, and he's worthy, but he also just loves us. And I was even thinking about sometimes where we're talking, I'm dealing with this sin, and when I was coaching, there's 105 guys that I just love them, and I'm kind of in it together, and I act like a nut, so they think they're a little more mature than me, and that's fine because they probably are. But I think about some of the stuff that you go through, and not just guys, but I hung with guys all the time, but things you struggle with, and I had a guy that was, and he was an older guy, and he was saying that I'm really struggling with I'm entering, I'm really struggling with sexual sin, and there's, and thoughts and pornography, mm-hmm. whatever. And all I could think of was, I went back to the dad analogy. And it was like, I'm kind of thinking that a daddy is looking down and pretty stinking excited about being in the fight. Oh, I'm so bad. Yeah, we've got that established. Here's the deal. If you're in a fight about sin or about something's wrong, he's rejoicing in that. He's not madder. He loves you, so he's not piling on. You know what I mean? It's like he is forgiven and but it's not like it's this continuum that we're on. And in Galatians, Paul says, I think it's Galatians, could be Philippians, that we're going to work out our salvation with fear and trembling until the day of Christ. And that means we're never done, and that can be, we're never done. Or it can be, man, I still can grow. I still can grow. I still can grow. And I think that he loves he loves it that we battle, because I'm a daddy. If my kid's struggling with this thing and he gives up, I might really be a little ticked off, and I'm just a man, I'm just a person. But if he's in a fight about it, that just blesses me. You know what I mean? And so I think that's another part of his love. And on top of all that, we can't comprehend how much that he loves us, but we try to think that we know, or we try to explain it. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but we can't come close. So, don't sometimes we end up putting him in our image instead of the other way around.
Yeah. I love your idea of God's in the fight with us and he's actually fighting for us. And it reminds me of the verse from Exodus 14:14. The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still. And I've always loved that verse. But to me, as someone who's very active, who's very involved in things, the idea of stillness was always hard for me to wrap my head around. Like, what does that mean? Does that mean I just sit and do nothing? And so I recently, in the past couple of years, came across the Hawaiian Pidgin Bible translation, and it's very different. It's in a different dialect, but I love this verse specifically. It says, the one in charge, he the one gonna fight for you guys. You guys just shut up and watch. And I just love that translation because it helps me understand what is stillness. It's, okay, I just need to shut up and watch God work. And the more that I try and strive and try and fight this problem, this sin on my own, the more I'm going to just keep failing. But God is fighting for us. He's the one in charge. He's fighting for us. And if I just shut up and watch him work, that's where the true victory comes. And so I love that idea of just letting him fight for you. So thanks for bringing up that point. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we're in the mix together. You know what I mean? And that goes with pray without ceasing, And again, when I'm a little kid in Sunday school, pray without ceasing, yuck. And now I'm like, oh, how cool is that? We're doing this together. You know what I mean? That's what that kind of means to me. Just what you were talking about. That's so cool. So, and as a kid, I thought, be still and know that I'm God. I hated that verse because I thought I had to take a nap.
Exactly, yeah. And
I was always in trouble for not being still. And but then I found out be still because he's got it. He can handle the big stuff. So he can be still at speeds around 100 miles an hour. So
that's so good. Well, we loved hearing you talk all about your faith journey and just you growing up and maturing in your faith over and over and seeing your dad as this like Abba Father, seeing Jesus as Abba Father. And I kind of want to know where football plays a role in this. And how did you become a coach? And did you always think this was something you wanted to do, or where did that come to play in your life?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think back and I've had a little time to think about some of that. And but when I was a little guy, all I cared about was sports, and it's kind of a good thing. I whatever season it was, I grew up in Chicago, and we had all the there's like 14 kids on our block. All the houses were like house driveway, and I didn't even know it was a bad neighborhood until my kids told me later on. But it was a great place to grow up because we just had kids, you know what I mean? But I love sports. My dad was really a good pastor as I grew up. My older brother Dave is a really good preacher also, and so I kind of felt like, I wouldn't say pressure, but I don't know that much, like. Nowadays, you can know everything. We were talking about internet before. It's like it's like you can know everything, and back then you're kind of pigeonholed into different things. So I wondered about being a pastor because that's what I was going to be, and because that would be expectations of people, and then really when my wife, we met, we were deciding we're getting married. She went to Wheaton, I was at Bethel, and she knew the desires of my heart. But I didn't really have a huge okay to do anything else. And she was more of a, yeah, why not? So I kind of went into coaching and changed my major and wanted to be a football coach. I always loved baseball, probably the best, and then, but I was probably a little better at football, and so, but then the intrigue, it became pretty intriguing to be playing football, and then so then just some opportunities came along with that, and so that's it's kind of how it does. I've always been like, I've always loved to play, but I've always had a good understanding and how things work. But probably the most fun thing, and I'm not sure I knew back then, but more, I love team building. I love being, I love being a part of, and sorry, just thinking about those guys. There's 100 knuckleheads on our football team, and getting them all to give up their own stuff for each other, it's really, that's probably the joy. Sorry, the joy of my life. So anyway.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, so, but I didn't know that back then, so I kind of got a little confidence from my wife saying, well, why would you, if this is all you care about, why don't you do that? I did have, my dad, when I was a kid, always talked about, do what you love to do and find somebody to pay you for it, or, you know what I mean? And don't be encumbered by a job that is all there. And so I just felt like I had gifts for it, but I think all young coaches think, I remember, the first time I was a head coach, I was at Cathedral High School in St. Cloud, and the first drive, we scored in like 7 plays, and I remember my strut. I thought, I remember how smart I was, and we were losing 20-7 by halftime. So I just like for the rest of my life, he got stupid fast, But it's just kind of it's a weird deal. But I was drawn to the sports, and didn't know it maybe till later. But I was really drawn to the team part of it, and people, not just guys, but people. Caring about each other and giving my gifts away. We talk about give your gifts away for free. Don't, well, I'm gonna lift really hard if I can be all conference, or I'm gonna lift really hard, or I'm gonna do the extra work, for me. But you kind of have to get rid of who, if you don't care who gets the credit, there's a lot more joy, and I promise you'll be more effective. It's even, and this is weird, because we talked about kind of mixing this whole thing in. When you get into that elevator we talked about, and you get in happy, the rest of the day, that guy might have picked him, or gal, whoever you're with, might have picked them up to be happy later. If you get in grumpy, it might have made them. So it's all residual, you know what I mean? And so if we're all kind of like not worrying about our own stuff, I mean, obviously you gotta work hard to get good. And I'm not saying, deny. Sometimes we get silly. Oh, deny myself, and we think we're super duper because of that. Well, why don't you shut up and lift, right? Get your work done, but get off of it being all about you.
Yeah.
And I always talked about, give your gifts away to us, but understand that you are part of us. It's not you and us, it's us and us. And so that's kind of that team thing that I love. And then, but I think we all are on a lot of teams. We're in a family, and I want, our things we talk about, having a grateful heart, and I want my kids to be grateful, be happy, rejoice, stay connected, I want me to, and then I got to do that. And then our football guys, and then our school, and then our other club, or our kids and our friends, and what do we do? And then whenever you're kind of giving out good aroma, it catches on and it goes on like that. And there's a ripple effect. And that's where a culture is produced, to where there's a bunch of people that love each other, not just in a goo-goo way, but in a, it's kind of cool, because I don't yell very much, but when I do, holy cats, it's kind of, I kind of start laughing sometimes, but it's like, it's pretty effective, just because I'm not whining all the time. You get what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
and I think that even a dad and a mom, sometimes if they're the kids don't hear them anymore, right? And so there's a balance in there to where, we're in this thing together, and I just think there's a lot of joy, and there's a lot of joy that people miss when they're not on a team and in a team and in that thing. And it's probably what I miss the most being done. I know it's what I miss the most.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I just think it's so cool because, you do look at the football players on the team, you look at the football players of the past. Our uncle actually played under you, and they have developed such strong characters as not just strong football players, but as strong men. And I just love when I run cross country at Bethel. And so whenever we would run around the track on Friday nights before games, you guys would always stand around and listen to worship music and sing worship music together. And that's just something that I'll always remember. And I just think that's so cool. And I would love to know, just how do you balance that culture, but also the excellence piece of it too? Because you obviously have had a successful coaching career. I mean, we mentioned before, 252 career wins. You were inducted into the Minnesota Football Coaches Hall of Fame. And that's something that's also just a testament to you as well. So how do you balance that excellence with keeping and maintaining that team culture? Because I'm sure once you start getting the wins and everything, it's hard to sometimes balance the two together.
Yeah, I think one of the best things is when I came to Bethel, we were really not very good, and so my expectations were low. I feel guilty about that sometimes, but I really had again, growing up in Chicago, I was a Christian kid, and I wanted to be that guy. You know what I mean? But I wanted to be liked also, and all those things. But there's so much of that. Christians are soft, or and Bethel was really kind of crummy in football, and it really irritated me, because back in the 70s I had played there, and we were kind of good for a few years in there, but other than that, just stinko all the time. And I honestly feel like I don't know if this is legal or not, but I'm going to ask the Lord when I get up there if it was okay. But it kind of ticked me off. I wanted us to play with a chip on our shoulder. I would ask our defensive guys, who are most responsible for the physical play and hitting and stuff. They think they know we're Christians. What do you think they think of us? They think we're soft, and boom, you know what I mean? And that being, we want to be. In fact, our goal, and we never would put this on a banner or everything, but our goal was and is to have the other team hate to play us, because we will play so hard for so long that it'll be palpable and for each other. And we think that can be felt. And it turns into, when you're consistent, that's when the big plays and the big hits happen. It's not like a one-time, kind of the difference between courage and being courageous. There's a one act of courage isn't as big a deal as living in courageousness. You know what I mean? And so I think that we kind of just used what people thought, and had a little chip on our shoulder about, well, you think Christians are soft, that's fine, but we are going to make Saturday not feel good for you, in a loving Christian way.
That is so cool.
Yeah. And I think, we didn't take ourselves so seriously. All the wins kind of snuck up. You were talking about those records, and I really, I'm proud of that in a good way, but I'm proud of us in a good way because of how we did that. It's a Bethel thing. That's not a Coach J thing. It's kind of stupid that one guy gets credit for all those wins, and I didn't make one play the whole time.
Well, I just love hearing your passion for the game, your passion for the team and for football, and just also hearing your passion. You're a grandpa, and you spoke at chapel just about your grandson and just how being a grandpa is different than being a father. Do you want to talk a little bit about your grandpa state of life?
Yeah. It's every time I talk about family and football, guys, I get teary. So you guys can edit whatever you need or leave it in. I don't care. But my grandson, I have 6 grandkids under 6, and William, who is named after my dad, his nickname is Muck, and man, I love that kid, but he's just Papa. What's the football situation? He's just the best, and I think people joke about being able to, when you're a grandpa. The couple things I've found out is like people say, well, oh, it's nice because you can leave, you get to play with him and then you can leave it. But what they really mean there is that when you're 68 years old, playing with 6-year-olds is really hard. You get so tired. My wife and I, we go and be with those kids, and it's like, but what I love about that is I can just be free to give everything I got to them, and I the biggest thing, all of them, Jackson, Lincoln, Sullivan, Emmy, all of them, I want to, every time they see or hear me, I want that rejoice thing, and I want them to know that I love Jesus, and I'm thankful for everything, And it's pretty easy because when I'm with them, I'm kind of like, and wrestle, 6-on-1, and I always lose, but that's on purpose too. It's just, I don't know, so I mean, some of the stuff we talked about, Symone, is just that I get to, and when I was a dad at 30 years old and we had 3 kids, my son is only 20 months older than my twin daughters.
Oh, wow.
So we had all our kids at the same time. So
wow, yeah.
I was a diaper changing fool. I was one of the best in the nation. But it was like, man, that was a lot of work, and I could be way less intentional. And I didn't even have the wisdom as a 30-year-old, to get all that I get now. And I want to bestow on that, not in a haughty way, but in a, as long as I'm alive, I want them to know that their pop loves it.
Yeah. That's amazing. And
that's kind of like the Lord, He loves us as long as I'm alive. To live as Christ, to die as gain. So I'll be with him, or he's loving me. So.
Yeah, there's a lot of people who listen to this podcast who are either they're our age, but we also have a lot of grandparents and parents. And what would be a piece of advice that you would give parents and grandparents to teach their children and their grandchildren?
Oh, boy. Let them see that you love Jesus. Don't just tell them all kinds of stuff. Speak life into them. I think discipline them and love. I think that's a key. I think stay connected. All the things we talked about, it's not that easy because you guys are sisters, and I know that you'd kill for one another, but you've almost killed each other too. I know that for sure because I have twins. But like real life is not, oh, goo, everything's good. And as parents, we're always trying to make sure, get everything out of the way. And I don't think my parents were really that way. They didn't even know what I was doing. They were lucky I like sports. But I think now, you know what I mean? We're so we're so into it. But I mean, sometimes I would tell parents and grandparents that you need to be respectful and listen and, have some discipline, but I think you can do that with joy. And it kind of goes with the whole thing. Be grateful, tough, devoted as marks that I want to be part of me, my family, my kids, my grandkids, and but we have to, grandparents, you got to try to stay awake because it's there's a reason you have kids when you're younger.
That's so good.
Yeah, thank you so much for that.
Yeah, thank you so much for all that insight you've shared. I just know a lot of people are going to get a lot out of this podcast and just really learn from your experiences. And we always love to end the episode with asking our guest, what is one piece of truth that you would encourage people to be rooted in?
I can't get off it, and I don't want. My first thought is love, and my second thought is, well, that's too regular. I got to come up with something, but I'm going to resist that. And sometimes I don't think we realize that love can be a rebuke. Love can be, accountability. Sometimes we think accountability can be encouragement. You know what I mean? And my advice is to love deeply, but intelligently. And what I mean by that is, like, get your head out of the sand. We're in a war. We are in a stinking war. And the king already won, but it doesn't feel like it a lot. You just got to stay. You got to stay in the fight and walk in the way that you want to walk. And hopefully that will be enough. It doesn't have to have a whole lot of words. I have way too many words, according to my whole family. But you don't have to have a lot of words, but the way you walk, the way you are, the way you care, the way you love will make a difference.
Amen.
Wow, that's so good.
That is so good.
Thank you so much, Coach Johnson. We just appreciate you taking the time to chat with us today. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks, you guys. Love you.